Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today we have Gino Barbero joining us, and he has a lot of experience in real estate, starting from all the way back when he owned a restaurant, which I don't know. Did you actually own the real estate with that restaurant? Were you renting at the time?
That's a question in itself, Hunter. That
Yeah.
could take up the whole entire show.
Can it?
But to
Okay.
make a long story short, I went into business with the family. My mom owned the building. There were 3 apartments upstairs, and we should get into that story as to why I got into real estate. She had 3 apartments upstairs, and I paid her rent for 20 plus years. And we sold the building about 5 or 6 years ago, right when COVID started. And that was her retirement. That one building with those 3 apartments up with, actually kept her going for 20 plus years.
That's the power of just one building can pay your retirement. That's kind of how I look at it. Right before we started the show, we were talking about what I do, which is vacant land, where I buy and flip a lot of land. And you're saying how that's something that you can get tired of because you were doing flips yourself for a while. So I do have a couple rentals right now. And that's kind of how I look at it, is like, they're not making that much money right now, but in 30 years from now, when the mortgage is paid off and I own them outright, that's a nice bonus to add to my retirement. So that
Let's
sounds
jump
like it
in
worked
right now,
really
because
great.
that's important. It's important what you just said. First of all, the title of the show is cool. Sell the Earth. I would actually title it, if I had a show like this, I would be calling it Buy the Earth, because I want to actually buy assets, right? At the same time, it's a little bit of a different paradigm if you think about it, because you're young, you need to create equity. People are telling you focus on cash flow. Well, when you don't have equity, it's hard to create cash flow. So you've got the right mindset. Now, to be truly wealthy and to create wealth, what you need to do is what Robert Kiyosaki talked about in his Purple Bible 30 plus years ago. You have earned income. Right now, you are generating earned income. The difference between the poor mindset and the wealthy mindset is that the wealthy mindset takes that earned income and goes and puts it into another asset. They want their money to work hard for them. Right now, Gino and Hunter are working hard for our money, as we should. But the differentiator is that Gino and Hunter also want our money to work hard for us. That's the difference. And the younger that you can start at that, and the mindset, if you can adopt that, will change your trajectory for the rest of your life. So you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing. And for you, you're going to increase exponentially, because right now you're saying, oh, I've got a couple single family homes. In the next 20 or 30 years, they'll be paid off the mortgages. No, what you're going to do is you're going to continue to do this business. You're going to get really good at what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, you're going to find out all these different tools, syndication, seller financing, master leases, and you're going to start buying deals with equity in them. And you're like, wow, I don't really have to pay down the mortgage like I want to. I can start cash flowing with these deals. So I can have my flipping business of land here. I can also develop some land. I can also hold some land bank something, because that may be my retirement as well. You're going to have a whole, what we call, conveyor belt of ideas and strategies to fulfill. But the long-term goal for anybody who wants to create wealth and who wants to minimize their tax burden and who wants to keep more of their money is ultimately to become an entrepreneur and to own these assets and to really look at how these assets can really minimize your tax burden. Because right now you're flipping land, you're making good money, but you're paying a lot of good money away. As you learn the strategies and get into these different asset classes, you're going to say to yourself, wow, it's really not how much I make, it's how much am I keeping of my money.
Yeah. It's not how much you make. It's how much you keep. That's a great point. How did you get started with all this then? Because I mean, you know a lot now. So you've gone through and you've tried all these different strategies, and you know where to put your money and what to buy. How did you learn all of that? How'd you get started?
The fact that you're saying I know a lot, I can also counter it by saying I don't know a lot as well. It's just the reality. As you get older, you tend to say to yourself, "Wow, there's a lot of shit that I thought I knew back then, and I just still don't even know." And when I hear the word expert, I cringe. And the reason why I got good at what I did is I chose a lane. I decided to get into multifamily back in 2008, and I said I want to really learn this business. I made a couple of terrible mistakes before. I bought a mobile home park deal. I bought a self-storage deal. I bought a strip mall. It was just, I was all over the place. I was your typical beginning investor by saying, I just want a deal. And then when I realized, wow, the story where I figured out multifamily, I was at my restaurant. It was a Friday night. It was snowing. It was in New York, and parking lot was abandoned. And I was out there shoveling snow, and it was freezing. I remember just like the shovel just hitting the gravel and just making that noise. And I remember sitting out there all by myself. It was freezing. I'm getting pelted by hail. And the thought that's going through my head is, I've got another week where I'm not getting paid. And then I look up at the building, and upstairs, my mom had 3 apartments. And in one of those apartments, the light was on, and the thought ran through my mind. My mom is at home, comfortable in her bed, at sleep, while she's getting paid. She's getting paid whether it's rain, snow, or shine, and I'm out here working my ass off another week, freezing in the snow, and I ain't getting paid. And that's when I realized the power of real estate, the power to be able to create that wealth, the power to be able to have monthly recurring revenue. And that's what I'm like, dude, I'm bought in. I need to do more of that. I can't leave the restaurant yet because I don't have the money and I don't have the skills yet. But hey, if a woman in her 50s who was an immigrant, didn't go to high school, can figure that out, anybody can figure it out.
Yeah. So how did your mom buy that building? How did she get into real estate? Is that something that she knew what she was doing, or is this just something she came across and it happened to work out for her?
I've often pondered that, Hunter. And what I came to realize is after I became a money coach about a year and a half ago, I learned, in money coaching, it's not about the money itself. It's about the patterns, the beliefs, and the behaviors that we have when we're young. I mean, what did your parents say about money? What did they talk to you about money? Did they even talk to you about money? Now, my mom, in her immigrant mindset, back in Italy, they really didn't have money. The way they had wealth was in the land that they owned, the properties that they owned, and believe it or not, the livestock. So sheep. So when she came to America, the American dream was to own your own property, to own your own home, and to buy some buildings, right? That was where the wealth was. And that just transitioned into my entire life. I remember when I was in high school, she went out and bought a duplex. I'm like, why are you buying another house? We have one. And she's like, no, if you buy this house, you'll get rental income. And I'm like, I didn't know what she was talking about when I was in high school, but she was my mentor, sort of. And as we got along and as I went to college, I graduated college. I hated the corporate world. The cubicle thing for me was just like a slow death. So I said to my mom and dad, you guys own a restaurant. Why don't we buy one for the family? So I already had that entrepreneurial mindset from them. We end up buying the restaurant, but she's like, I'm not buying a restaurant unless I can have additional income coming in. And I didn't really understand that as well. She's like, hey, Gino, when you pay the mortgage, you're going to pay the mortgage to me who owns the business, who I own the building. And by the way, if we have some apartments upstairs, that's like found money. That's extra money. And I thought that was just an incredible concept. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And from that, a couple of years after we bought the restaurant, I ended up buying a duplex from that mindset, from that idea of, wow, that's what my parents do. So when I look back, I said, that's how I was raised. And if you're listening to this right now, it's a real incredible, for me, breakthrough. Think of like the beliefs and the behaviors that I had as a young adult growing into my adulthood. And even to this day, sometimes I get a thought in my mind about money. Is this the young child that's actually thinking about this, my unconscious behavior or pattern, or is it me right now? Because I know a lot of people who are older saying they don't have money. Meanwhile, you look in their checking account, they have money. Is this the little scared child who heard from their parents, put that back, we can't afford it? Or what do you think, we're rich? Or money doesn't grow on trees? Well, if you're actually working from that mindset or working from that behavior, you can see how that can hold you back by getting into real estate. Because all of a sudden, mom said real estate's risky. You got to go work. You got to get a job. You got to save for retirement. Well, if you've heard that your entire life and you're trying to break into an entrepreneurial endeavor, it may be challenging for you to do that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I see that. Yeah, I see that among like friends, even where I talk about kind of what I do, and they're like, "Oh, that's risky. Like you're spending 10 grand on a piece of land, right? Like what if something happens?" Well, it's like, sure, there's some risk with buying it, but the alternative is if I don't buy it, then I'm missing out on that potential to make X amount of profit. And it's just like some people, they just don't look at it as the other way around. It's like, oh, that's a lot of money that you're risking right there. But if you're doing it smart and you know what you're doing, right, you can limit your risk. And the alternative is this, you're not having that potential to income as well. So yeah, that mindset is huge.
You said one word there. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is important because this is how my mindset changed. Your friends say that you're spending 10 grand. You are not in your mind spending 10 grand. You're investing 10 grand. And also, Hunter, why are you joining this mastermind? You're spending 5 grand in a mastermind. No, the entrepreneur and the person who has the growth mindset understands that they are investing in themselves. Now, where does that mindset come from? I have no idea. For me, it just came from, looking at other people who are successful. You look at everyone who's successful in life, top performers, they all have coaches. They all have mentors. They all are in this group. They are all lifting their standards. And to be able to do that, you need to become a better person. You set a goal not to achieve the goal. You set the goal to become the person that you need to be in order to hit that goal. That's where most people have that disconnect. So when somebody says to you, you're spending 10 grand, all you need to say is, I'm investing this money and I know what I'm sort of doing because I'm trying, like you said, I'm limiting my downside risk. Now, what made you get into entrepreneurship? What made you want to get into this business?
Yeah. So I've always liked entrepreneurship, right? So in college, I started the entrepreneurship club. And that's also where I got into real estate, is because I wanted to get into real estate. I know that, like 90% of millionaires are in real estate, or whatever that stat is, right? So I reached out to my advisor and I asked if he knew anybody who was in real estate that I could work with. I was a marketing and finance major. So I was like, I can help them with marketing or sales or whatever that they need. And he connected me with an investor locally, and I started helping him with some of his marketing materials and also doing cold calling for him. And then in return, he was teaching me real estate. So I learned a little bit about like seller financing, and he was also doing flips and traditional rentals and sub-2 and all the stuff like that. So
yes,
I was learning a little bit about that, and it didn't correlate 100% to me getting into land. I saw a piece of land and I wanted it for myself. I bought it. Didn't work out for what I wanted it for, so I sold it and made money on it. But it was kind of the background of learning from him, who was my mentor, all the different strategies that he was doing and working with him, that I was able to apply that to land. So I don't know where it is that...
Let's rip that back. I want to rip that back even further. Sorry to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I want to go back even further. What did your parents do for a living? What do they do for work?
Yeah. My dad works or he's retired now, but he worked for the government doing like labor negotiations. And then my mom worked at a group home with special needs people. So not like business. I mean, my dad is in business, but
So
not
as
like
far as
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, but as far as money, how is money talked about in your home? How do they think about entrepreneurship? How do they think about getting into business?
I mean, they weren't as entrepreneurial, right? They're more the saving type, I'd say.
So what pushed you into that revenue? Like when you go back and you take a look at it, because it could have gone two ways. It could have gone the way that your dad's like, hey, go get a job, 401k, go to college, get a safe, secure job. You obviously did the difference. What was the switch? What do you think in your life was the switch that made you get into the path that you're in right now?
I think it's probably social media. I mean, just seeing stuff online, just watching podcasts, watching videos on YouTube, and seeing other people that were doing. Actually, one thing I read was, do you know Cody Sperber, the clever investor guy? I saw like one of his marketing materials for wholesaling, and I was a teenager, so I was just reading. I was like, oh, wholesaling, that sounds cool. I think that helped interest me in real estate a lot as well.
But then if you keep pulling on that thread, a lot of people may have watched that and may have said, yeah, I don't want to do that. That just seems risky. And especially having parents who weren't like uplifting you. I'm not saying they weren't uplifting you, but they have totally different backgrounds. They're pretty safe and secure jobs as opposed to what you're doing. When you went to college and you're like, I like this, did you have friends who was your support group? Were your friends and other people like entrepreneurial as you were?
Yeah. Especially once I started the entrepreneurship club, then I started to get a good community of people around everybody was starting a business and doing their own thing. So I don't know what the trigger was exactly. I can't.
You have to stop and think of that, because that's very important, because there are going to be times in your life and your journey where you're like, this job sucks. I just bought this piece of land. I spent 30 grand. And you really want to lean into, well, I'm doing this for a reason. There's a why I'm doing this. And sometimes it's for good causes. And I've seen times when people are doing something and they're building this $30 million business, and they look back and they go, well, I sort of built this business because I hated what my father did. And I want to show everybody, I don't want to be poor like them. I want to show them. So I'm going to go build this business. And that's great. But when they build a $30 million business and they sell it, they're like, well, what's next? What do I do now? I just want people to choose a path, whether it's working for a company, whether it's building a business, whether it's investing in real estate, if it's right for them. They're doing it for the right reasons. And I think if you do it for the right reasons, when those days come by, and I've had a ton of them, where like the land, where you have tenants who burn your apartment down, you have tenants who have dogs crapping all over the place. You're saying to yourself, why the heck am I doing this? You will know why you're doing this. It's because you really enjoy creating value. It's because you enjoy controlling your own destiny. You don't want to have a boss. You like to create wealth. You like the stability, whatever it is. It really comes down to that. And I want people to really focus on why they're doing something. And that's the important thing. And if you go back into your history, As a money coach, you'll see the patterns and the beliefs and the behaviors, what that through line is. And then you'll see the recurring. And at some point you can say to yourself, well, this is an empowering one. Like I was taught to save as a young adult. That's all immigrants talked about. But at some point, saving can become detrimental because if you can't enjoy the money or if you're too afraid to invest the money, that's not a good thing either. So I had to really sit down and go, wow, mom is telling me to save for a rainy day, never for a sunny day. And we can't take a risk. I literally had one restaurant for 20 years, one. And when I partnered with my business partner, Jake, and back in 2011, within 5 years, we had almost 700 units. Like how did that happen? And when I look back, I say, well, I had one mindset with the family business and I had a completely different mindset and a completely different set of beliefs with the real estate. And that was shocking to me. I'm like, wow, I don't know if I learned much more as far as business skills, but mindset skills and the reason why I was doing it and saying to myself, well, I don't have to believe all this stuff. Do you need money to make money? Yeah, I think you do, but does it need to be yours? Do you have to stay small? I mean, I don't know. You can choose to do whatever you want to. And I always thought if I'm not at my properties 24/7, then I can't scale. And obviously that was another fallacy. So I started challenging all these limiting beliefs. And as you start doing it and you start conquering them, it's like, wow. On our very first deal, Hunter, it was a $600,000 deal. We needed 10% down. 10% was held by the seller as a seller finance note. So we bought a $600,000 asset with $83,000 out of our pocket. And that $600,000 asset was generating $13,000 a month in gross revenue. If you think about those numbers, it's insane. That property, we still own it, but to think like, wow, that's really risky. It is risky, but think about you're owning and controlling a $600,000 asset with $83,000 out of pocket. That is incredible. That shattered all of my beliefs. I've got seller financing. I've got a partnership. I've got a deal that's not in my backyard. I mean, everything completely came crumbling down in my world. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have to have these old beliefs. I can start creating these new beliefs.
Yeah. No, mindset definitely is very important because if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to be going in the right path. And having goals is also important too. So understanding where you want to go with that mindset, because I see a lot of other people too, where they might have too much mindset where they're thinking, they might bite off more than they can chew, or they want to be a big real estate investor, but they're also not taking action on it. So you have to have that nice balance where you're taking action and having good mindset. So that's what you did. Right? You were able to start taking action and buying assets. One thing I like to do is figure out more like the specifics of like, how do you buy these assets? How did you start getting into real estate? Because you can think about it and want to do it, but how do you actually do it? Right? So you started flipping was the first thing that you did with real estate, or what was the entry level step for you?
I'm going to ask you a question before I answer because it's going to tie into my answer. You use the word mindset, the right or the wrong mindset. To you, what is the right mindset, or what is the proper mindset, or what is a good mindset to you?
Yeah, having the right mindset or a good mindset would be, I think, having that goal. That's why I brought up goals, is figuring out where you want to be and how you're going to get there, and having a good plan and executing on it. That's kind of my idea of a mindset, is where do you want to be at, and how are you going to execute on it and plan it out well and actually do it. That's kind of what I think of when I think of mindset.
Do you mind if I drill down into that, and that will tie into how I got into whatever ventures I got into? To me, mindset is split up into what Carol Dweck calls the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Now, Gino, the pizza guy at the restaurant, sort of had the fixed mindset. I can't make any changes. I'm more of a conservator. I'm going to continue to do what I did. I can't take too many risks because if I'm wrong, that's not good, right? I mean, you could think of the book by Carol Dweck. She has countless examples of what a fixed mindset was. John McEnroe was probably one of the best tennis players alive at the time back in the 70s. He was incredible, but his fixed mindset made him lose a lot of matches. He blamed the weather. He blamed the sawdust. He blamed the crowd noise. He blamed when he was sick, whenever he lost. It was always somebody else's fault.
Quick break for a read from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Direct REI. Look, if you're a real estate investor, you know leads are the most important part of the business, but finding and following up with those leads is time-consuming and expensive. Direct REI solves that issue. It's an AI acquisitions platform with a built-in CRM, and here's what it actually does for you. It sources the leads straight from the county property records, It skip traces and enriches your data. It writes your sequences and runs your campaigns across email, text, direct mail, and phone, where you can send tens of thousands of outbound messages per month for less than the price of dinner, all from one dashboard. It tracks every channel so you know exactly what's working and what's not. And when a deal comes together, you can send contracts and collect e-signatures right there in the platform. And here's the real kicker. You don't have to run all that yourself. There's an AI acquisitions manager that's built in that operates the whole thing for you. It finds the leads, it launches the campaigns, it works every channel, and when somebody replies, it drafts the response back in your voice so it actually sounds like you and not a robot. It runs your entire pipeline in the background day and night and only taps you in when there's a deal that's worth your attention. You stay in control, you close the deals, it handles the busy work that's been eating your nights. There's a free plan available, so you're not risking anything to try it. Go to directrei.com, hit try free, and let it start finding you new deals today. That's directrei.com. Now back to the show.
Versus the growth mindset, where you have someone like Michael Jordan. The dude won 3 NBA championships and said, you know what? I'm going to go play baseball. How many people do that? I think he got bored. I think he needed a challenge. I think he said to himself, my gifts and talents are not immutable. I wasn't born with them. I need to use them and I need to learn more. I need to grow. Oh, here's a problem? Well, let me find out the opportunity. That's what the growth mindset is. Like, okay, I didn't hit that goal. What did I do wrong? Meanwhile, the fixed mindset is like, well, I didn't hit that goal. I must be a loser, so I'm not even going to try that. They quit right away. It's always somebody else's fault. And that's the mindset that I had at the real estate, at the restaurant. I'm like, I'm going to hide in the kitchen. I'm going to continue to do what I do, but I'm going to start complaining. At some point, I had enough pain in my life where I'm like, I'm pissed. There's other people out there during the Great Recession making tons of money. I'm not. What am I doing wrong? I picked up a book by T. Harv Eker called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. In the book, T. Harv basically says your fruits are in your roots, which basically means if you have a growth mindset, you can grow those roots. You can make them stronger. And if your roots are stronger, your fruits or your results are going to be stronger. Now, I had no fruits because I had no roots. I wasn't there claiming that I had a growth mindset. When I pivoted into real estate, I'm like, I am going to be a blank slate. I don't know what I'm doing. I really want to learn this business because I've already gotten into a couple of really bad deals. So let me buckle down. Everyone who's been successful in a business or in real estate has focused on one asset class. I liked multifamily because it had some type of customer experience. I was in the restaurant space. I wanted to deal with residents. I like the monthly recurring revenue. Every month, that person is going to pay me rent. And I have fixed costs here. So if I can collect X more than my fixed costs, I can sort of start making money. And I can start part-time. I don't have to start another business and start flipping. So I'm going to start in the multifamily space with Jake because I can start buying one asset at a time, take it slow, and learn. That's the key difference in mindset, whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. Now, in your life, you're going to have mindsets around different things. Some people love health. They're going to have growth mindset around health. Some people are really amazing at being parents. Some people are really amazing at making money. Some people are really good at their job. They exhibit that growth mindset. If you're struggling in your life, be honest with yourself. Do you have the fixed mindset? If you try something and it doesn't work, you quit right away. Are you curious? Curiosity is the currency of learning. I was so curious early on with real estate is why are some of these people that are making money in real estate, they're not that smart. I am not that smart. I'm a pizza guy. I'm like, if that person can do it, why can't I do it? And I became curious and I learned it. My initial reaction to real estate was, hey, I'm going to buy a couple of buildings and hang out and be a landlord. No, investing in real estate, whether you're buying land, whether you're doing self-storage or multifamily, is you're buying a future stream of revenue. You're buying a business. Once I understood that, I became ultimately curious and I'm like, I want to learn how to do that. This restaurant thing, it doesn't really feel like a business because I feel stuck. I can't scale. It's not repeatable. It feels like a job. I want to have this. And I think ultimately, I'll come back to the pain. I was moving away from pain, as Tony Robbins said, moving towards pleasure, moving towards how do I get into this part of my life? And I had enough pain back then to say, yeah, I'm going to start taking steps. But the first step was investing in myself, investing in all these different programs and learning the business of real estate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It sounds like when you're talking about mindset, it has to do with taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you versus giving up on them right away. So kind of the part of it that you would say?
The fixed mindset that doesn't even notice the opportunities. That's the problem. I can give you countless examples in my life where I thought God closed the door. He's like, no, you don't want to. But with the growth mindset, it's like, okay, God's sort of closing that door, or he doesn't want me to go down that path, what can I learn from that experience? And it's interesting, using God as an example. I remember back in 2012, I was really struggling at the restaurant. We were getting audited by the state. The sales were down. I just couldn't see a path in front of me. So I went to confession with my priest. I sat down, and it was sort of a sob story. I was confessing myself. I'm like, Father, I can't see my way through. We're not making money here. I don't have the answer. And instead of, Father coming and cajoling me, he literally is like, what the hell are you complaining about? And you think you're the only one? I've got 5,000 parishioners here. They're driving me nuts. I've got so much debt on the books here. I've got so many problems. The church needs to be fixed. Everyone's complaining here. My sister back in Ireland, her business is failing. A lot of parishioners' businesses aren't doing well. You ain't the only one. And I sort of sat there and I'm like, bro, I thought you were supposed to be kind and help me out. And I'm like, God is actually speaking through him and saying, it's okay. You need to have struggle. You'll be able to figure it out. If life was easy, life would not be enjoyable, would be pleasurable. And I sat there and I'm like, wow, there's the problem. And what's the opportunity? The opportunity for me was I wasn't the only one in that position. There were so many other people, but when you're stuck in that position, you can't see for anything. Your only tunnel vision is only yourself. And I realized, hey, stop focusing on myself. Start focusing on other things. Start helping other people out. Start looking at other areas. And it just led me to say, okay, the restaurant is great. I love it, but I really need to start leaning more into this real estate thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. So you'd say that's kind of like your trigger of it was the amount of pressure from from restaurant business. And was that kind of the moment that you switched over and the light bulb came on? Or because you asked me what was kind of my reason, what was the moment that it switched over for you?
The moment that it switched over, I think for me was back in 2007 when my dad passed away. Now, I had been in restaurant business with him since I was 8 years old. I would go to work with him when I was 8 years old. And when we opened the restaurant, I was 24. I had worked with him for 12 or 13 years and I loved working with him. And I literally had to sit there when he passed away and I had to say to myself, am I living his dream or am I living my dream? And do I even like this anymore? And that's when it really hit me. Because I'm like, I don't want to live a life of regret by saying I'm still here because this is all I know. And I think there's a process of change, the change process. And when you go through it, most people aren't ready for that change. And I think at that point, I said to myself, I think I'm ready. 80% of people are not ready for change. I was in the pre-contemplation stage back in 2006 and 7. I wasn't even contemplating it yet. But when he passed away, that's when I started contemplating it. That's the second stage. Then the third stage is, okay, let's start taking education. I went out as soon as he passed away. I'm like, I got to learn this real estate thing because we own a couple of assets. The education starts, and that's the awareness part. And then the next part is, okay, time to take action. 80% of us are not at that action stage yet. Whatever you are in life, whether it's getting healthy, whether it's getting married, whether it's starting a family, starting a business, whether it's buying land, we're not there yet. At that stage in '08, my mind was open and I'm like, I want change. I desire change. I crave change. I need change. That's what you need to be able to, I think, become successful in any endeavor. You can dip your toe in the water, but if you're actually not prepared and not ready for change, you can take Gino to water. You can't force Gino to drink. Gino has to drink by himself. And that, to me, I think was the triggering point of I want to change. I need it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. It's the background of the restaurant business and your father, that was kind of like his thing and yours and his thing together.
Yes.
And when he passed away, you thought, and that's kind of powerful how you're saying it's his, what was it? How'd you word it again? It was his dream.
I mean, sort of his dream hunter, but at the same time, the other influence was in '08, the world changed. I know most people don't remember. It seems like it was 100 years ago, but all of a sudden the internet came along. All of a sudden you have all these different delivery services. All of a sudden websites become a lot more prominent. Instagram or Facebook, they start becoming more prominent. Advertising is starting to change. The mom and pop model of going out and eating is changing. So we're having so much more competition. And I'm seeing all of that on top of my dad not being there anymore. And then I'm in business with my mother, who's more of a conservator. She doesn't want to change either. So I'm stuck. I'm like, if I'm stuck here, I don't see a future for myself. I don't see hope. And I think everyone listening to this, we all crave hope. And I felt hopeless at that point. And that's when I said to myself, I could either stay hopeless or pick up that book by T. Harv. And he's telling me whatever you've done up until this point is all on you. From what you do on this point forward, if you take responsibility and you take control, you can change things. And that for me was like, wow, that was inspiring and scary all at the same time.
Yeah. And the market changing too, that's one thing that you bring up is big, and pivoting. You pivoted because of that. You saw that the business was changing. That's something, even I've been doing land for 7 years now, and I've had to change my business model from the beginning to where I am now, especially in the last couple of years with AI, because there's a lot of things that I used to do that AI can now do that I don't need to hire for, or I don't need to do myself. So pivoting in the business is definitely huge. And if you don't change, you're probably going to fall behind as well. So that's something. Have you done recently with your business? Are there any things that you change, or are you implementing anything differently now since you started in real estate to where you are now, how have you changed your business around?
It's a great question. I think the fundamentals of business are pretty much the same. Now, the reason why I was able to scale with multifamily versus the restaurant, once again, I went out, we hired coaches from Traction, Gino Wickman's company, EOS. We hired coaches from Scaling Up, Vern Harnish's company. I didn't come out of the womb knowing how to scale a business. Now, I don't think anybody does. Listen, if you're listening to this and you know how to scale a business when you were born, let me know, because that's pretty incredible. I wasn't one of those people. I needed to learn. I had never done it before. And for us, at a certain point, we couldn't be the I'm a guys. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, because I'm a gets burned out real quick. We decided we need to have a kind of governance, a kind of culture, a kind of core missions and mission statement within our company. We needed to create a BHAG within our company. Those are all the things that you need before you even talk about AI, before you even talk about any of this other stuff. You need to have the foundations of the business in place. You need to have people. You need to have systems, and you need to have some type of culture if you're going to scale an entity or an organization. And if you're thinking about trying to implement all these cool things and all these strategies, well, your marketing and your sales and your team and your mission statement comes from within the company. So you can be doing all this stuff on the outside, but if you haven't gotten the inside ready, then it's all for naught. I'm going through it right now. I have a company called Barbero 360. It's the family company. We're still trying to figure out the marketing and the messaging. So I can have all these cool funnels and all these cool strategies, but if I'm not talking to the right person, if I'm not solving the right problem, all the tech in the world is not going to help me make money, even in the short term. And if it does, you're going to give it right back. To answer your question specifically right now, what we're doing differently, but what's cool about real estate, let me get back to it. You still need to have touch point. AI can do so many wonderful things, but I still need to pick up the phone and talk to a broker, text a broker. You still need to have those personal touches. But AI can help you with so much, especially in property management, where you have an AI chatbot, or you can have an AI leasing agent that can help you out, or you can have AI help with the maintenance team, creating all these different reports, or you can have AI help you with the customer experience and the customer journey within your organization. There are so many things that technology is allowing us to do right now, as opposed to, back 4 or 5 years ago. You can get a lease document. You can get, we're actually selling a piece of land. So we've got a deal with a broker. You throw it right into AI. AI can read it for you in 30 seconds and tell you what's wrong. It can really help you out. You want to do market research? Crap, you guys are so lucky today. Now, years ago, I literally have to fly into the area. I couldn't, my median income was very hard to come by. I couldn't get the demographics. I couldn't get the number of units being started in a property. It was hard for me to get average rents. Right now, not that AI is 100% accurate, because I still would say, but it's a lot more accurate than what we had. So you can literally do your market research in an area within your 20 minutes in your underwear and not even leaving the house. There's so many ways you can actually help with you. And I think if you don't do that, and if you're the type of person that's like, well, I don't really need it, ultimately, someone like Hunter is going to call a broker and get a listing a lot quicker than you. And it's dealing with speed, very similar to in the restaurant, in the real estate industry. When you're in property management, if you don't call back somebody within 30 minutes of them inquiring about a rental, ciao. I think it's like 70% that they're gone. So speed is really important nowadays, and the ease of access and the way people actually, talk. No one wants to call on the phone anymore. Everyone's either texting or using AI. So you have to be able to change, and you have to see what's going on in your industry as far as what is the new technological advances. But before you do that, once again, make sure that you have some of the foundation built within your company before you go out and start trying to implement all these changes on the tech side.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you built up your internal team and how you built culture with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question because you need the mental fortitude to manage people. And for us, I had experience with it for working in the restaurant industry. I mean, I had over 40 employees and it was only a 70-seat little Italian place, but I had delivery drivers, I had teenagers working up front, I had people in the kitchen, I had waitresses. So I sort of, knew how to manage people. I'm sort of a people person. I like dealing with people, especially in that type of environment. When you start hiring, you do need core values. That's one thing that I didn't have at the restaurant. You need to have what your core values are because you're going to hire and fire and you're going to run your company based on the core values. The people first, they make it happen, the extreme ownership, growth mindset, all those are our core values right there. And if you don't have those core values, well, how are you going to hire somebody? How are you going to fire somebody? How are you going to lead the company? How are you going to have vision around that? So before you, and I don't want to hear the excuse that I'm only by myself. There's only me and one other person. Well, ultimately, as you start generating more revenue, you're going to hire more people, or you even having virtual assistants or somebody from Fiverr or having a landscaper come to your property. You want that landscaper to exhibit the core values that you have. And if they don't, you fire them. And you need to really build that within yourself. And that's what happened when we went up with this scaling up coaching. That's one of the first things that we worked on. It's sort of your North Star. What kind of culture do you want? Ultimately, for us, we had to work on our big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, I think as Jim Collins likes to refer it to. Our BHAG really focuses around customer service. We want to become the Chick-fil-A of apartments. That's a pretty big and audacious goal. So from that, we distill it down to, well, how are you going to do that? And we've identified that maintenance requests, first-time close rates when you go to an apartment and fix the unit and you fix it the first time, getting all those requests done quickly as possible, that really fuels our BHAG. Now, what was the BHAG at the restaurant? What were the core values? I didn't have one. So it was really hard for me to set the vision. It was only really basically, well, I'm here. Let's see how much money we can make this week and let's rinse and repeat. It's almost as if you have employees, but there's no vision to it. They're just there for a paycheck and they're there not for the more common good. And I think that's what people really need to focus on if they're going to grow a business. And ironically enough, families who are successful run their families very similarly to how they run their businesses. They may not know it, but if you've got a family, and I have 6 children, we've homeschooled our kids, and I've been married over 20 years. We do have a family governance. We do have a rhythm in our family. We have dinner and lunch almost every day with the family. We do have dinner. We do have family meetings. We do have date night. These are things that you do in your business. But if you want to run a really great family, you need to have some of these core values and some of these beliefs and some of these actions running within the business and the family as well.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about when I'm older, when I have a family.
You should.
So
and
bringing that in.
One of the things that you should think about is it's your values. I want you to sit there after this show, sit down. I want you to really ponder what your values are, because another way to make decisions in business, it's all about values-based decision making. No one should tell you what your values are. You value entrepreneurship. You value taking risk. You value taking growth. Every decision you make is based on that. So I'm sure that when it comes to watching Netflix at 5:00 in the afternoon, you're probably not doing that. That's not what you value. But I'm sure a lot of your friends value their own time, so they're okay with that. Remember, they don't want to spend money on real estate, and that's fine. That's their values. Every time you make a decision, whether it's putting something in your mouth you're eating, whether it's watching a show, whether it's dating somebody, whether it's raising your kids, whatever it is, unconsciously, you're making those decisions based upon your values. And when you make a decision that doesn't feel right or that went wrong, you can typically point it back to the values. And I'll give you a perfect example. On my very first real estate deal that I had with a partner, and this was just the first deal that I did not by myself. This gentleman drives into the restaurant, a nice yellow Maserati. I could still hear that engine purring. He gets out. I'm sitting at the bench, and his name is Mike. I ended up calling him Maserati Mike. He sits down next to me. He's like, I got a deal. You want to invest? And I'm like, sure. I invested with him. 6 months into the deal, draws stopped. After 12 months, no more communication. And 18 months later, I lost all of my $172,000 in that deal. Now, I was pissed. I blamed Mike, rightly so, because he was a moron. He was fraudulent. I think he was negligent more than anything else. He was just a moron. But did my values align with Mike? Was he a person of integrity? Was he a person who was going to say what he did? No. Did my interests align with him? So I can blame Mike all I want. But at the end of the day, I did not take responsibility. I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't know how to analyze a mobile home park. Did I get onto the plane, fly down to the properties and take a look at them? No. So I went in total misalignment with what the values that I held. And that's why that deal failed. Because if I had been in alignment with my values, I would have said, Mike, tell me a little bit more about this deal. How are we actually going to make money? And Mike, why aren't you putting any money into this deal? You should have some skin in the game. Why don't you? I didn't question that. And I should have actually been more educated on the topic, and I wasn't. All these red flags of misalignment with my values, I just missed them because I'm like, hey, I'm greedy. I want to make money, but that's not what you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on, does it align with your values? And if it does, and then something happens and something goes wrong, that's fine. But for the most part, when it doesn't align with the values, something typically in the long run will go wrong. If these deals had worked out and I kept investing with Mike, sooner or later, that whole Ponzi scheme would have fallen apart. I can almost guarantee it.
Yeah. So is that something you work with people on now, is mindset? And do you do like a coaching of some sort with people on mindset and
I do.
alignment of values?
Yeah. And it's one of those things where when you talk about it, especially with men want to learn how to make money. And that's important. They rarely want to talk about their behaviors or their feelings or their attitudes. And it's interesting because there's a stat, I can't remember the stat exactly, but 95% of all businesses in the US generate less than $1 million. 95%. Now, from $1 million to 10 million, I think 20% of those businesses go to $10 million. So think about that. If you across the $1 million mark, you get 20% of them go to 10 million. To me, I was at an event, a Maui mastermind event, great event. David Finkel, I've interviewed him a couple times. He's been in the education space for probably 20 years. But what was recurring at that event back in February that I went to, everyone kept getting up and talking about mindset and behaviors, because it's not difficult to get to 1 million. It isn't. But why aren't most people getting to 1 million? It's because of the behaviors and the beliefs they have. It's not just personal. It comes down to the business. So I am a business behavioral coach. Let's get into the business. So what's holding you back? And if I had used this for my experience in the restaurant, if I had known this back in the restaurant, I could have easily diagnosed what was going on. It was not so much the business that was the problem. It was the person driving the business. All of these beliefs that I had about being a rebel, or what we call a victim, being a conservator, or what we call someone who not want to take risk or wanting the status quo. Well, those are the things that aren't going to help you grow your business. So I can come to Hunter and say, this is what we're going to do. I've got this beautiful plan for you. I've got it all laid out. We're going to do X, Y, Z. Well, Hunter's going to go look at it and go, yeah, I think we could do that. And I'm going to get back in touch with Hunter 2 weeks later, and Hunter's going to go, well, I really didn't do anything. Well, why didn't you? I've got the playbook here. And Hunter can't really elaborate or talk about why. I know why. It's because of all of these recurring patterns and behaviors and beliefs that we have that are hindering us from taking action. And that's what I love working on. And obviously, there is the strategy. I mean, our real estate company, we have 1,800, almost a little over 1,900 units. We generate over $2 million a month in revenue. So I've been able to scale that business really incredibly over the last 10 years. I've got the education company that I sold in multifamily a year and a half ago. And now I've got this family company. And for me, business really has some certain foundational pillars that you need, right? That's that. But I also want to incorporate it with the behavioral aspect of it. If you can put the behavioral aspect of it, which comprises probably 80%, the mechanical is 10 to 20%. Like, let's teach you in real estate what a cap rate is. Let's teach you what debt service coverage ratio is. Let's teach you what cash on cash is. Let's teach you how to buy right, operate, execute. That's all important. But if you don't have the mindset and the behaviors to couple that, you're going to be, flying in the wind, and also let's juxtapose that with, if it's just purely mindset and you don't have the technical skills, well, then you're...
Hey, hope you're enjoying this episode. I just want to take a minute to tell you about Sell the Earth. Sell the Earth is my land investing program where I teach the exact systems I use to buy and sell land every single day. My team and I complete over 100 land deals a year, so everything you learn comes directly from what's working in my business today and not outdated strategies or theory. One thing that makes Sell the Earth different is it's constantly evolving. Real estate changes, marketing changes, and AI is creating opportunities that didn't exist even a year ago. As our business grows, the program grows with it. We continuously update the training with the newest strategies, AI workflows, automations, and marketing techniques that we're actively using to find more deals and operate more efficiently. When you join, you're not just buying a course. We meet every week on live coaching calls where you can ask questions, review deals, and learn from other investors and myself. If you want more personalized guidance, we also offer one-on-one training to help you overcome roadblocks and accelerate your process. Whether your goal is to close your first land deal, create another stream of income, or build a full-time land investing business, Sell the Earth gives you the systems, support, and community to help get you there. If you'd like to learn more, head over to selltheearth.com. Now, let's get back to the episode.
You're in trouble as well.
Yeah. No, the behavior is huge. I know that's one thing where people say they don't have enough time, right? And then you can go and look at their phone and see their screen time, and they have like 3 hours on TikTok. And it's like, if you just took some of the times of the day where, maybe you're on your phone or you're watching TV and you spend 30 minutes doing something, learning, reading a book, watching a podcast on real estate, learning something instead of just scrolling on TikTok. Like sometimes people have a lot more time in their day than they really realize. And that's one thing I see from a lot of people and a lot of people I talk to is they don't have time to do it, but it doesn't take that much time to start learning and then to actually start doing it either.
So one question for you is, once again, back to the values. Do they value learning and growth? Or do they value just wasting time and frittering time away? Unconsciously, they don't know. The better question to ask is, why did you spend, and you don't want to judge people, but what is it that made you spend 3 hours on TikTok? And what I did is early on in my journey, I created a timesheet, a 24-hour time blocking sheet for a week of where every minute of the day went to. And it may sound laborious. Like, why did you do that? Well, I was in the restaurant at the time. I was homeschooling my kids. I had 4 kids at the time. So I thought I had no time. But when I did it, holy crap, you wake up in the morning, I'm homeschooling the kids, go to work, I've got lunchtime, I've got break time, I come home, let's say 7 or 8 o'clock at night. There are times throughout the day where I was just frittering time away, and there was no internet back then. There was no social media like there is now. So if you're saying to yourself, you don't have time, well, the reality is you're placing the time where you value, and maybe you don't value it, and that's okay. And once again, maybe your friends aren't just ready for change yet, and they value their time on TikTok more than they value their time on spending. But if you want an eye-opening experience for yourself and you're listening to this, I would go out, I'd get a time blocking sheet, put 24 hours for the day, make it for 7 days, and see what happens. And you will probably want to vomit at the end of the week to see how much time you've actually spent. Is it 144 hours a week? Is it 24 times 7? Is that what it is we have per week? It's incredible the amount of time. If you take out, 8 hours of sleeping, 50, you're still left with 90 hours or so. 40 hours to work, you got 50 hours. You have 50 hours a week, more or less, to do what you want to do. Even if you take 10 of those 50 hours a week, at the end of the year, that's 500 hours that you have used for personal development. If you take 5 hours to read a book, that's 100 books that you could have read in a year. That's 2 books a week. Can you imagine reading 2 books a week, what that could possibly do to change your life? Why are we even having this conversation? If you can't find 10 or 20 minutes throughout the day, then you don't value growth.
Yeah, that's one thing. It sounds kind of similar to what I used to do when I first got started in real estate. Is I would block out on my day, like I'm going to do an hour of cold calling. I'll do an hour of, list building. I'll do an hour of this. And I would just block out my calendar, and that's what I do for each hour. And it made me very productive. I don't do it as much anymore, just because I've gotten into the habit of it. But when I started, that's what I would do. And that's what I tell a lot of people is like, just put 30 minutes on your calendar a day or an hour a day, 5 hours a week. You can get into real estate. The first 2 hours of the week, you're working on doing some sort of learning or research or building a list. And then you can spend an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours at the end of the week cold calling through that list. It depends where you are, where you're in your business, right? If you're a younger person, you have more time, so you can spend time on the phone. If you have more money, then you can put more money into finding deals or, whatever it is in the aspect of real estate that you're doing. But if you spend like an hour, block off that time and work on it, you're going to start getting some traction with it eventually. So
do you mind
pretty similar.
Do you mind if I give you an example or a way to start? Because I think it's important. What you're saying is truly important. But most people get stuck because what they do is they get really excited and they want to create a new habit. And they're like, dude, I'm going to run a marathon. And my first workout, I'm going to go out and I'm going to run 10 miles. And they may, but then they burn out right away. And it happens in real estate as well. Hey, I'm going to cold call an hour a day for the rest of this week. Week 2, they're like, dude, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. What you should really do when you're starting a new habit, I'll give you 2 examples. The first one is if you're going to run a marathon, the first thing that you should probably do is start watching some videos, start doing start listening to some trainings, start looking at your nutrition. Don't even start running yet. That's probably the first week. The second week is go out and buy a pair of shoes, running shoes, put them on, just take a few brisk walks, but make it a habit to start walking, right? And maybe the third week, maybe you start jogging, maybe a half a mile, but just do a half a mile. Don't burn yourself out. Week 4, maybe bring it up to a mile. Week 5, maybe a mile and a half. And you start stacking slowly. Don't overwhelm yourself. What most of us do is we get really excited. We get online. We start watching all these videos. We start taking all these supplements. Week 1, we're completely burned out. By week 2, we're like, I can't do this. That's what happens with a habit. And then to ultimately continue to adopt that habit, we need to do what James Clear says in his book, Atomic Habits. We need to create and become the identity of that person, ultimately, for it to stick. And to be able to create that identity is you need to start taking the actions of that person. So if you want to become a marathon runner, you're not going to say, I'm going to run a marathon. I am a marathon runner. Ultimately, and how do you build up to that is by creating those daily habits. And then there's going to be days you don't want to do it, but you've had enough habit building where it's in there. And then all of a sudden the identity kicks in and goes, a marathon runner doesn't quit. Marathon runner pushes through. And it's the same with the real estate investor. The multifamily investor, they should start out by talking about markets and picking a market and just doing some research. And at the end of the week, start putting in just 10 minutes a day. Watch 1 video a day about it. Build some muscle. Then by week 2, watch 15 minutes. And then by week 3, maybe you start calling a broker. Call 1 broker a week. Analyze 1 deal a week. Don't analyze 15 deals in your first week because it's going to be completely overwhelming and you're going to hate it. Just do 1. Start getting used to it. And then by the time you realize it, it's sort of a habit. It sort of becomes, okay, I got to make my broker calls. Okay, I may talk to an investor, or I may have to go to an event or a seminar. Hey, I may jump on a podcast. I may write a blog. All of a sudden you start taking the actions of what a multifamily investor does. And then ultimately you're Gino in his shed at the restaurant talking to Jake on the phone where you're like, dude, we got to get this deal done. Like, what would a multifamily investor do? You're going to push through everything and not make excuses. And you've built up the muscle. And then all of a sudden you start identifying as the person you're trying to be, whether it's a marathon runner, whether it is a great father, whether it is a real estate investor, whatever that is, you start developing the habits and the behaviors. It does take some time. That's why start off slow and build that muscle.
Yeah, start with a little routine. It doesn't have to be a ton to get started, but as long as you're doing a little bit and you're chipping away at it, that's when it starts to grow. And then, like you said, you turn into, eventually you're going to be the full-time real estate investor, or full-time, whatever it is that you want to be, as long as you're taking a little bit of time and putting the effort in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Hunter,
huge.
what James Clear says in the book, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. He says, don't focus on your goals. Your goal is your outcome. It's the result. It's great to have one because you need to know where to go. The problem with most of us is we focus on the goals. We want to lose 20 pounds. We want to buy a deal. We want to flip a piece of land. That is the goal. But if you don't fall in love with the system or the process to get you to that goal, that's what I was talking about. Talking to brokers, analyzing deals, talking to investors, putting in offers. These are all parts of processes and systems that we need to fall in love with, that we need to adopt. And if we do those enough and we become regular with those things, ultimately, you will hit your goal. Instead of just saying, I got to hit my goal, I got to hit my goal, I got a vision board. That's all powerful. It's all necessary to do. But if you don't create a system and a process to be able to look and achieve the goal, you're never going to achieve that goal just through pure willpower. You may, but I highly doubt that. You need to really understand what the rhythms and the systems and the processes and really enjoy those, because those are the ones that you're going to go back on. And those are the ones that you're going to do all day. You have to figure out a process of cold calling. You're not going to buy a land deal unless you talk to people. You have to figure that piece out. If you're enjoying it and you're like, I'm on the phone and I love this, people are rejecting me, that's okay. Because I know sooner or later somebody's going to say yes to my proposal. If you fall in love with that, there is no way that you're not going to hit your goal.
Yeah, you have to like what you're doing. That's when I was in college, I was in engineering originally, and I went and I shadowed somebody doing it because the whole thing was like $100,000 a year, whatever it was. I was like, you make a good salary. So I was like, I want to do that. So I was in engineering for 2 years, and then I shadowed somebody at their job and what they're doing. I was like, that doesn't look that fun. So I was like, I don't think I could do that every day. So then
You're wise beyond your
I
years because
switched.
most people don't look at it that way. Congratulations. I give you a lot of kudos for that because most people don't realize that. They look at the 100 grand and go, wow, that's a great outcome, right? But that's not your outcome. That's not what you're focusing it on. And probably have a much better relationship with money than most people do because most people are focusing on the money. They're focusing on the outcome, not on the inputs, not on really, I want to be really good at something. I want to enjoy something. If we could focus on that, money is just the ultimate result of what that looks like. And that's where I think people have it backwards. They're going to I'm going to make this money and then I'm going to be happy. Well, you can still be happy and successful without having to make any kind of money. It's really an internal feeling. And if you can feel that way and you can bring that joy to your everyday interactions, to your everyday job, can you imagine doing that for a year or 2 years or 3 years? It's inevitable that you're going to become
Yeah,
successful
you
and
get
that you're going
burnt
to
out
enjoy
if
life.
if you don't enjoy it. You don't enjoy it, you get burnt out. So
Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
that's huge. But where should people follow you? Where should they learn more about you, and where can they talk to you?
Just go to barbaro360.com, BARBARO360.com. That's the family website. That's where we have our podcasts. That's where we have all our blogs. If you want to schedule a call with me, you can schedule a discovery call with me. I also have a company called Jake and Gino. That's where we have the real estate. That's where we do our podcast. Jake and myself do a podcast there. And I also do a how-to podcast every week. It's like a 15 to 20-minute business show on different aspects of buying real estate, investing in businesses, buying businesses, scaling companies. You can go to jakeandgino.com. For me, ultimately, it's just, I think family life is so important and I think finances are so important. That's why this whole new venture for me is really important. And the mission statement for us, I talked about mission statements, is families with financial intelligence can change the world for the better. My son's 24 years old, so he deals with young adults and talking about money. I deal with families and entrepreneurial families who are making this money and all of a sudden they're sort of drifting apart. Well, what's the purpose of making money? To me, it's to enjoy it and to empower families and to really create a legacy. So that's what Barbaro 360 is all about.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll have that all linked below. So if anybody watching wants to go learn more and watch your podcast and some of the stuff that you have going on, that'll be linked below. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and really talking about, like, mindset was a huge topic on today's podcast. So it's something different from what we usually talk about, where usually we're talking a little bit more about the specifics of real estate, right? But it's good to actually think about why you're doing it and how you're going to do it. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing that.
Thanks, Hunter.
Thanks.